What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel for another episode of the Ask Me Anything series. I hope you all had a great weekend. I know I'm a day late with this episode. These usually come out on Mondays, but I just completely forgot to make the post on the community tab on Sunday, so better late than never. I still wanted to get an episode out this week. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to all of you who took the time to come up with a question and leave it on the post. Even the ones that don't get featured in the video, just know I read every single comment and I appreciate all of you guys. I think this was the most comments we had on a post for this series in a very long time. If you guys want another episode next week, be sure to drop a like on this video, and if you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers in 2023, so every subscription counts. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first question from Just Pucking Around, who says, do you think the Sabres should make a big trade deadline acquisition and try for a playoff spot? Their prospect pool is deep and they can afford to trade a few future assets for current assets. I think this is a really good question. The Sabres up until this point have had a fantastic season based on the expectations that everybody had for them coming into the year. They're in control of their own fate right now. They have 6 games in hand over the Islanders and the Panthers, who both currently hold the 2 wildcard spots. I definitely feel like this year's Sabres team has earned the opportunity to, at the very least, stand pat through the deadline, not be sellers, give this playoff push a legit shot. If I'm the Sabres, I think the way that I would approach this year's trade deadline is look to improve the team by acquiring guys with term left on their deal, guys that can be, longer term options and not go out and get rentals. In my trade deadlines prediction video, I said that I feel like Jake McCabe would actually be a nice option for the Buffalo Sabres, provide a little bit of defensive stability on the left side. He has 2 more years left on his deal after this season. He's familiar with the Sabres. They're familiar with him. That's where he started his career and has played the majority of his career up until this point. So that's where I stand on the Sabres. I don't think it would be wise for them to go out and trade a bunch of future assets for a rental, but if they can get guys who, like I said, will be longer term options, then I definitely think that's something they should consider. The next question we have comes from Ryan Downey 8311, who says, as you know, the Devils are considered front runners for Timo Meier, but in the event that the Devils do not get him, who do you think the best plan B would be? Also, really appreciate the kind words. One team that I think makes a ton of sense aside from the Devils is the Carolina Hurricanes, second best record in the league at this point, incredibly hot as of late. I believe they're 9-1 in their last 10. I feel like they could definitely use another dynamic forward aside from guys like Aho, Svechnikov, and I think you can throw Natchez in there this season. They don't really have anybody else who has the ability to be a game breaker and really break open a game on their own. Don't get me wrong, they have a lot of other really solid players. They're very deep up front, but I think they're lacking like one more true star forward, and I think Timo Meier would be perfect for them. They also have a ton of future assets. They have 9 draft picks in the upcoming draft. They have 2 first rounders in 2024 that they could leverage, so I think they have the kind of assets as to where they could put together a pretty intriguing package for San Jose as well. According to Frank Saravalli, one other team that has entered the Timo Meier sweepstakes, and this report just came out like a couple minutes before I started recording, is the St. Louis Blues. Saravalli said St. Louis, while also attempting to reshape its decor, is looking to leverage the picks they've acquired from O'Reilly and Tarasenko. Could you imagine that? With them now having 3 first-round picks, if they want to get serious about Timo Meier, they could definitely throw a pretty sizable package together. Moving along now, the next question we have comes from Oliver, who says, with the Leafs saving cap space in the Ryan O'Reilly trade by including Minnesota to help with the cap relief, and also them retaining Nick Robertson and Matthew Nyes, does this leave opportunity for them to go out and make another big splash by going for Meier, Kane, Colton Parayko, etc.? And also, really appreciate the support. I really can't see the Leafs going out and making another blockbuster move. I honestly don't think they have any interest in moving Matthew Nyes. I feel like he's probably going to actually play for them to finish out the season and maybe even in the playoffs after his collegiate season ends. Now, that's not to say I think the Leafs are done making moves. I feel like they'll probably add a defenseman between now and the deadline, maybe somebody like Luke Schenn from Vancouver. Could they still work out a Jake McCabe trade? I know that one would probably be a little bit on the pricier side. The next question we have comes from Let's Go Pens, who says, what goalies do you think are most likely to get traded at this year's trade deadline? Also, really appreciate the support. I don't expect to see many goalies moved at the deadline, like maybe 1 or 2. Usually teams that are playoff contenders have their goaltending situation solidified heading into the season. It's not often you see a playoff team go out and get a new starter at the deadline. A recent example of that, though, would be Minnesota getting Marc-Andre Fleury last year. If there is going to be like a starting caliber goaltender move, though, I think the most likely candidate is definitely Karel Vejmelka of the Arizona Coyotes. He's having a fantastic season on a really good contract, and with the emergence of Connor Ingram and how well he's playing, you have to think that would definitely make Karel Vejmelka expendable if you're Arizona. There's been so so much talk over the past week or so about Jakob Chychrun and how his most likely destination is Los Angeles, and part of me wonders if maybe we could see a Karel Vejmelka included in a Jakob Chychrun trade to LA. The next question we have comes from Kyle, who says, I cheer for specific players more than I do teams. For example, I really wanted Ovi to win a cup for the longest time. Are there any individual players that haven't won a cup that you would really like to see win a cup? This is a really fun question. One guy off the top of my head would definitely be Erik Karlsson. He's always been one of my favorite players. I feel like he's one of the most likable players in the NHL. I was so invested in his playoff run with the Senators in 2017, where he was playing absolutely out of his mind. They came one goal away from making the Stanley Cup Finals. Super happy that we're seeing Karlsson back playing at an elite level this season, and whether it's at this year's trade deadline or in the offseason, I'm really hoping we see Karlsson moved to a contender at some point, because I don't just want to see him playing at this good of a level on a rebuilding team. The next question we have comes from The Tank, who says, with Timo Meier's recent injury, does this indicate San Jose are getting close to trading him and he's just being rested as a result? I don't think so necessarily. I feel like if they were holding him out for trade related reasons, they would just say that, because it's something we've seen with Jakob Chychrun, Vladislav Gavrikov. But on the other hand, I do feel like San Jose is probably being overly cautious with Timo Meier, which definitely makes sense. Like, say if the Sharks were in a wild card race right now, in the thick of the playoff race, then maybe this is an injury Timo Meier would not sit out because of. But with the Sharks games being pretty much meaningless with them in a rebuild, you don't want to risk Timo Meier really tweaking something and then miss the opportunity to cash in for him at the deadline. The next question we have comes from Hoosie's Huddle, who says, what should the Red Wings do about the Bertuzzi situation? I know 32 Thoughts has reported he's off the trade market, but I still personally think the Red Wings should still consider trading him because he's a UFA. So I actually made a video about this on the second channel yesterday. If you're not subscribed to my second channel, where I just post shorter form NHL content with much less editing and stuff like that, be sure to go and do so. The link is at the top of the description. But basically where I stand on the whole Bertuzzi situation is, I know it's probably not the best asset management to not trade him at the deadline, but with the Red Wings streaking right now, they're in the thick of the wildcard hunt. It wouldn't send a great message to the locker room if you go out and trade one of the most important players on this team when the Red Wings are playing so well. You also got to think about the fact that Bertuzzi has missed a lot of time this season. He's broken his hand twice, and he's now just really starting to look like the Bertuzzi from last season again. So his value probably isn't the highest right now. Like, say if teams were only offering as much as like a third round pick and a B-level prospect or something like that, then I would honestly just rather keep Bertuzzi as the Red Wings' own rental than get a return like that. Moving along now, this next question comes from Charlie Bob for you, who says, with Barzal's injury, do you think that the season is over for the New York Islanders? And also really appreciate the kind words. I definitely wouldn't say their season is over by any means. They just had a massive win last night over the Pittsburgh Penguins. They currently hold the first wildcard spot. It definitely makes things for them a lot more difficult. And listen, even though they're in that first wildcard spot, pretty much every team chasing them right now has a good amount of games in hand. But listen, as long as they have Ilya Sorokin playing at this elite of a level, they're going to have a chance to win every single night. I can't imagine they're going to completely fall out of the playoff race. I think they're going to be in it right up until the end. And man, the Eastern Conference playoff race is shaping up to be really fun. The wildcard race, I should say. Moving on now, this next question comes from CRMCC, who says, seeing the NBA All-Star events on the weekend, would you like to see the NHL adopt some of the rules or events from them for their All-Star weekend? If so, what would you want them to adopt? And also really appreciate the support. I actually didn't catch much of the All-Star game itself. I did watch the dunk contest and the three-point contest, which I enjoyed, but I did see there was a lot of NBA players and just people in general complaining about the All-Star game and how it was basically just like a glorified layup line. No defense played whatsoever, so it seems like they kind of have the same problem the NHL has in that aspect. But what you have to remember when it comes to the NHL's All-Star weekend and the NBA's is like, it's for a younger audience, in my opinion. It caters to the live audience there as well. Like, say if your city hosted an All-Star weekend, I think it would be a blast to go out and attend all the events. It's just really something that I don't care about all that much. Like, do I wish the NHL's All-Star weekend was more entertaining? Obviously, but in the end, it's not a real big deal for me. The next question we have comes from Hayden Hallett, who says, do you want Detroit to make the playoffs, or do you think it is best for their long-term success that they miss this year? Also really appreciate the support. I 1000% want the Red Wings to make the playoffs. Would they get a better draft pick if they miss? Sure, but probably not even by that many spots, probably like by 3 or 4 spots. I honestly think at this point in the rebuild, playoff experience and playing meaningful games down the stretch is super important for this team. There's something to be said about, winning and losing culture. I feel like at this point, it's really important to start building a winning and competitive culture in Detroit. The longer rebuilds go on, losing more and more year after year, that can definitely take a toll on players, and I do think like losing culture is a thing that exists. Like, just look at the Buffalo Sabres after they drafted Jack Eichel. Everybody thought that their rebuild was going to be headed in the right direction, and in no time they'd be a playoff team. If the Red Wings missed the playoffs this year, that would be their 7th consecutive season missing. At some point, you have to start turning the corner, right? And if they can do that this year, then I'm all for it. I don't really care all that much about the draft pick at this point, because in reality, if they miss the playoffs, they're still not going to be in the Bedard sweepstakes anyway. And now for the final question of this week's episode, this one comes from Jelly Jeffrey, who says, with Connor Ingram's recent play, and he continues this play for a while, do you think he will be one of the greatest waiver pickups? And also really appreciate the support. I think I made a video on the greatest waiver pickups of all time a couple of years ago. If Connor Ingram continues to success with Arizona and, signs an extension with them in the offseason, I definitely think he could be one of the best pickups in recent memory. Connor Ingram is a guy who's always had, for the most part, really good numbers in the minors, in the AHL, and in the ECHL. Last season with Nashville was pretty bumpy, especially in the first round against Colorado, but like before that first round, he only played 3 regular season NHL games up until that point. He was a really raw player still at that point in terms of NHL experience. I think this season with Arizona has been really good for him. Obviously, he's getting the opportunity to face a ton of shots, and he's played really well, so I hope he continues this success. So that is going to wrap up this week's episode of the Ask Me Anything series. Like I said at the beginning, huge thank you to every single one of you who took the time to come up with a question and leave it on the post. You guys make this series so much fun for me to do every single week. If you guys want another episode next week, be sure to drop a like on this video. That is the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year long, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all soon.